Christians love a good redemption story, but forgiveness only goes so far. These religious leaders who fell from grace shocked the world when their crimes and scandals became public. The pastors who have fallen into sin have all kinds of excuses. It wasn't technically illegal. It was a youthful mistake. It was a conspiracy orchestrated by the Vatican. I didn't know it was a sin. You get the picture. But none of that excuses the hypocrisy of religious authorities preaching one standard for their flock and then flaunting those rules in their private lives. Here are a few of the better known ones. Ted Haggard. Ted Arthur Haggard is a founder of the Association of Life-Giving Churches. He served as president of the National Association of Evangelicals from 2003 until November 2006. Evangelical pastor Ted Haggard ranted against the evils of premarital sex, adultery, and gay marriage. That is, until he was caught in a gay sex scandal in 2006 with a male prostitute and masseur Mike Jones. Jones alleged that Haggard had paid him for sex over a 3-year period and had also purchased and used crystal methamphetamine. Jones publicly claimed that Haggard had been a client for years. Haggard told the press, "I bought methamphetamine for myself but never used it. I was tempted, but I never used it." Haggard claimed that he bought the methamphetamine but threw it away and added that he had never met his accuser. Haggard was forced to resign from his church. Following his downfall, he attempted to form a conversion therapy and embraced his heterosexual side. His wife stood by Haggard during the scandal. Jimmy Swaggart. Probably one of the most infamous names known in the Christianity market was Jimmy Swaggart, a Pentecostal televangelist that got his start on television in 1971. In the 1980s, he teamed up with the Reverend Jerry Falwell, Reverend James Robinson, and Reverend Pat Robertson to use the Christian right to shape the Republican Party. Swaggart's TV ministry, which began in 1971, has a viewing audience both in the U.S. and globally. At its height in the 1980s, his telecast was transmitted to over 3,000 stations and cable systems each week. Swaggart's fall from grace happened in 1988 when it became public that he was cheating on his wife with a New Orleans prostitute. Not only that, Swaggart was an avid consumer of porn and experimented with BDSM, all while condemning such immoral acts. Sexual scandals with prostitutes in the late 1980s and early 1990s led the Assemblies of God to defrock him. As a result of the scandals, Swaggart temporarily stepped down as the head of Jimmy Swaggart Ministries. On February 21, 1988, without giving any details regarding his transgressions, Swaggart gave his "I have sinned" speech on live television. He spoke tearfully to his family, congregation, TV audience, and finally said, "I have sinned against you, my Lord, and I would ask that your precious blood would wash and cleanse every stain until it is in the seas of God's forgetfulness." On October 11, 1991, Swaggart was found in the company of a prostitute for a second time. This time, rather than confessing of his sins to his congregation, Swaggart told those at the Family Worship Center, "The Lord told me flat out it's none of your business." Swaggart's son Donnie then announced to the audience that his father would be temporarily stepping down as the head of Jimmy Swaggart Ministries for a time of healing and counseling. Jim Bakker. James Orson Bakker, better known as Jim Bakker, is an American televangelist, entrepreneur, and convicted fraudster. Between 1974 and 1987, Bakker hosted the television program The PTO Club with his then-wife Tammy Faye and developed Heritage USA, a now-defunct Christian theme park in Fort Mill, South Carolina. Jim Bakker was perhaps the most popular televangelist in the 1980s, though his wife Tammy Faye gave him a run for his money. That all ended when Bakker was brought down by an enormous scandal that included sexual abuse and fraud. In 1987, Bakker's secretary publicly accused the televangelist of raping and drugging her. After Bakker resigned from his ministry, he was charged with accounting fraud and sentenced to 45 years in prison. Bakker was replaced by Jerry Falwell, who called his predecessor the greatest scab and cancer on the face of Christianity in 2,000 years of church history. In 2003, Bakker began broadcasting The Jim Bakker Show daily at Studio City Cafe in Branson, Missouri, with his second wife, Lori. Baker condemned the prosperity theology that he took part of earlier in his career and has embraced apocalypticism. His show has a millennial survivalist focus and sells buckets of freeze-dried food to his audience in preparation for the end of days. The items Baker is pushing the hardest, however, are his food buckets. One of these includes 60 freeze-dried meals with dishes like black bean burgers and buttermilk pancakes, all for the not-so-low price of $2,275. Let me get my change jar. On May 8, 2020, Lori Baker announced that Jim Baker had suffered a stroke that his son Jay described as minor. Lori stated that he would be taking a sabbatical from the program until he recovers. She blamed the stroke on Baker's hard work on his show and wrote that he had described the criticism against him as the most vicious attack that he has ever experienced. Baker returned to his program for the first time following his stroke on July 8, 2020. Robert Tilton. Robert Tilton was at one time one of the most famous names in televangelism. His show, Success in Life, was beamed into homes throughout the nation and earned the pastor's church millions per year during the latter 1980s and early 1990s. Tilton is a proponent of Sow Your Seed Prosperity Gospel and is widely known for his infomercial-style religious television program. His message consisted mainly of impressing upon viewers the importance of making vows, financial commitments to Tilton's ministry. His preferred vow, stressed often on his broadcast, was $1,000. Periodically, Tilton would claim to have received a word of knowledge for someone to give a vow of $5,000 or even $10,000. Phew, I thought he was talking about me there for a second. When a person made a vow to Tilton, he preached that God would recognize the vow and reward the donor with vast material riches. That's not really how it works. As a result of Tilton's television success, Word of Faith Family Church grew to become a mega church with 8,000 members at its height. One of Tilton's main tactics to get his enormous following to donate money was to ask them to send prayer requests to his ministry. He claimed he would use his special connection to God to personally pray over the request and increase the chance of the prayer being answered, assuming a little bit of money was sent alongside it. Right. The system operated for several years until ABC's Primetime Live caught wind of the scam. Following investigations, they released a special named the Apple of God's Eye. Tilton's ministry threw away prayer requests without reading them, keeping only the accompanying money or valuables sent to the ministry by viewers, garnering his ministry an estimated $80 million a year. Tilton claimed that his enemies had stolen the documents and planted them in the trash, but no one was convinced. You do know that lying is a sin, right? Tilton was sued for fraud by some who had sent in prayer requests in the genuine belief that he would be able to help, and his television show was thrown off the air. Though his ministry still preaches, it never came close to reaching the heights it achieved during his prime. Despite Tilton's repeated denials of misconduct, the state of Texas and the federal government became involved in subsequent investigations, finding more causes for concern about Tilton's financial status with each new revelation. After nearly 10,000 pounds of prayer requests and letters to the Tilton ministry were found in a disposal bin at a Tulsa area recycling firm in February of 1992, Tilton admitted in a deposition given to the Texas Attorney General's office that he often prayed over computerized lists of prayer requests instead of the actual prayer requests themselves, and that prayer requests were in fact routinely thrown away after being categorized. As each new revelation became increasingly more damaging, viewership and donations declined dramatically. The last episode of Success in Life aired nationally on October 30th, 1993. By that time, viewership had fallen 85% and monthly donations went from $8 million to $2 million. Kenneth Copeland. Copeland's evangelism calls for donations to his church, suggesting that parishioners will get a 100-fold return on their investment. He has been criticized for his use of donations and tax-exempt status to finance mansions, private jets, an airport, and other excessive purchases. Copeland, a Texas evangelist, came under fire for a viral Inside Edition video in which he defended his 3 private jets. Copeland justified his jet setting by saying that he could not evangelize without the aircraft. "If I flew commercial, I'd have to stop 65% of what I'm doing," he told journalist Lisa Guerrero. Copeland stated in 2015, in which he compared flying in commercial class to getting in a long tube with a bunch of demons, to fellow televangelist Jesse Duplantis. During the COVID-19 pandemic of 2020, Copeland repeatedly claimed that the pandemic had ended or would soon end, that he could cure his followers of the disease, and that followers should continue paying tithes to him if they lost their jobs in the economic crisis that the pandemic caused. He later made false claims to have destroyed the virus and to have ended the ongoing pandemic. Copeland has amassed significant wealth during his career and has referred to himself as a very wealthy man. News media have cited different numbers of his net worth, from $300 million to $760 million. In 2009, Copeland's $3.6 million jet was denied tax-exempt status, opening up a possible investigation into the church's expenses. Copeland failed to disclose the salaries of his directors. In 2008, the ministry stated it owned 5 airplanes, one of which is valued at $17.5 million. Copeland's ministry bought a multi-million-dollar Gulfstream 5 jet airplane. As of August 2018, Copeland had requested another $19.5 million for the building of a hangar, upgrading of the runway, and maintenance. Jesse Duplantis. Jesse Duplantis is a preacher based in New Orleans, Louisiana, and the founder of the Jesse Duplantis Ministries. Duplantis is considered another preacher of prosperity gospel. Louisiana minister Jesse Duplantis, who himself was implicated in Copeland's jet scandal, has been in hot water for his own jet-setting lifestyle. He claims God told him he needs a private jet, specifically a Falcon 7X, capable of carrying 12 to 16 passengers at speeds up to 700 miles per hour. In the same video, he showed off a photo of the 3 planes owned by his ministry that bore the caption, "It's not about possessions, it's about priorities." Sure it is. In May 2018, national news media outlets accused Duplantis of asking his followers to donate money to him so that he could buy a new $54 million private jet, the Dassault Falcon X. Duplantis said that his organization, Jesse Duplantis Ministries, had already paid for 3 private jets by 2006 and that he had been using them by just burning them up for the Lord Jesus Christ. Duplantis defended his choice by saying, "I really believe that if Jesus was physically on the earth today, he wouldn't be riding a donkey." Think about it for a minute. He'd be in an airplane preaching the gospel all over the world.
This dope-filled world,
right?
And get in a long tube with a bunch of demons.
Right. That's exactly the
and it's deadly.
We asked Jesse Duplantis and his ministries for comment, but they declined to respond. So far, no indication whether he's received any contributions for his jet.
In response to a wave of criticism, Duplantis stated on his ministry website, "I'm not asking you to pay for my plane. I'm asking you to pray for my plane." The Trinity Foundation, a religious watchdog organization, has kept an eye on Duplantis for more than 10 years. The organization's president, Ole Anthony, said that because of Duplantis' tax exemption, technically every person in St. Charles Parish was helping to pay for Duplantis' extravagant lifestyle. Joel Osteen. In the wake of Hurricane Harvey in 2017, preacher Joel Osteen, who helms one of the largest churches in America with 50,000 members and a 600,000 square foot stadium, was criticized for not welcoming hurricane evacuees into his Lakewood megachurch. A social media post from the megachurch claimed that the building was inaccessible because of severe flooding, but locals said otherwise, posting photos around the church showing streets that were easy to get to. Regardless of what happened, it brought negative publicity to the church and Osteen, who has a reported net worth of more than $50 million. "We have never closed our doors," Osteen said amid the controversy. "We are prepared to house people once shelters reach capacity. Lakewood will be a value to the community in the aftermath of this storm." Osteen's net worth was variably reported to be $40 million and $60 million in 2017. He lives with his family in a 17,000 square foot mansion in River Oaks with an estimated value of $10.5 million. Osteen says that as senior pastor, he draws no salary from his church, which has an annual budget of $70 million, and that he instead relies on the income from his book sales. Creflo Dollar. Creflo Augustus Dollar Jr. is an American pastor, televangelist, and the founder of the non-denominational World Changers Church International based in College Park, Georgia, a suburb of Atlanta. Dollar is known for his controversial teachings regarding prosperity theology. He has been long criticized for living a lavish lifestyle. He owns 2 Rolls-Royces, a private jet, and high-end real estate such as a $1 million home in Atlanta, a $2.5 million home in Damaris, New Jersey, and a home in Manhattan that he bought for $2.5 million in 2006, equivalent to $3.2 million in 2020, and sold for $3.75 million in 2012, the equivalent to $4.3 million in 2020. Dollar has refused to disclose his salary. For declining to disclose any financial information to independent audit, Creflo Dollar Ministries received a grade of F or failing for financial transparency by the organization Ministry Watch. On April 12, 2020, the hashtag #CredulousDollar began trending on Twitter, in which Dollar and other wealthy pastors were accused of not donating money to COVID-19 relief. Dollar was among 6 televangelists who were the subject of a 2007 investigation led by the United States Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa as ranking member of the Senate Finance Committee. Dollar and 3 others were not cooperative, and the probe concluded in 2011 without any charges. Dollar has asked 200,000 followers to donate $300 apiece so he can buy a luxury jet to preach worldwide. According to outlets, the jet cost about $65 million. The G650 is the biggest, fastest, most luxurious, longest range, and most technologically advanced jet by far that Gulfstream has ever built, Flying Magazine wrote in 2013. Benny Hinn. Tofik Benedictus Benny Hinn is an Israeli televangelist best known for his regular miracle crusades, revival meeting or faith healing summits that are usually held in stadiums in major cities, which are later broadcast worldwide on his television program This Is Your Day. He is also a huge advocate of the prosperity gospel. With a shady life full of healing scams and affairs, Hinn has been criticized by many organizations as running a fraudulent empire. In 2017, Pastor Costi Hinn, a nephew of Benny Hinn, came forward with a testimony of his time spent in Benny Hinn's ministry and what made him leave. In the testimony, Costi Hinn described the expensive cars and lavish houses that he and his family members owned and the luxury that surrounded their travel. Costi Hinn criticized the prosperity gospel and teachings of his uncle, writing among other things that healings only seemed to work on the Crusades. In 2019, Hinn announced to the world that he was rejecting the so-called prosperity gospel and would henceforth preach only historically established Christian doctrine. In 2006, Benny Hinn Ministries decided that Benny Hinn was in need of a Gulfstream G4 SP jet and sent out an email asking for donations to buy one. Benny Hinn Ministries purchased this jet in 2007 for $36 million, and it cost $600,000 per year to maintain. Paula White. Paula Michelle White Cain is an American preacher, author, televangelist, as well as a proponent of the prosperity gospel. She has been viewed as a controversial figure because of her belief in prosperity theology, which is the idea that donating to religious causes is the will of God and that it helps a person to become wealthier in other ways. Senator Charles Grassley launched a Senate probe in 2007 into 6 influential ministries, including White's, following complaints of opulent spending and possible abuse of nonprofit status. While Paula was still married to her second husband, Randy White, the two founded the Tampa Christian Center, which is now known as the Without Walls International Church, in 1991. The church became so popular that the couple purchased a neighboring property in Lakeland, Florida. In 2008, both properties went on the market due to financial issues. In 2014, Without Walls International filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Her private life has been scrutinized, especially as her marriage to Randy White dissolved. During her divorce from Randy, Paula was seen leaving a hotel in Rome hand in hand with televangelist Benny Hinn. While many assume that their involvement began while the two were married to other people, they both denied cheating. Paula has also been accused of sharing beliefs that are not in line with Christianity. In January of 2020, Paula defended herself when a clip from one of her sermons began making the rounds online. "In the name of Jesus, we command all satanic pregnancies to miscarry right now," she said in the video. The clip was viewed nearly 9 million times. Paula is currently married to Journey keyboard player Jonathan Cain. They began dating while Jonathan was still technically married to his first wife, Elizabeth Fullerton, who he has 3 children with. Their split was finalized at the end of 2014, and he married Paula in April of 2015. Some still around, yet others hounded from the public's presence by their actions. These televangelists are labeled by some as hypocrites and by others as heroes of God. We'll never know the actual truth, and if you yourself are a believer in God, then you know that they will someday have to answer in judgment for what they did, and they will do so. Until next time.